A global carbon tax. Is it in our future? Leaders at the World Economic Forum have it in their crystal ball, the potential impact it could have on developing countries. We'll explain. Plus, the U.S. is pressing the pause button on approvals for a large segment of liquid natural gas exports. We'll have more on what the decision means for the country and the environment. And the Pentagon, with some sunny ambitions in 2024, installing solar panels with the goal of being more eco-friendly. Hello and welcome to EarthX News, where we focus on sustainability and the environment. I'm Christina Thompson. Let's get into some of the biggest headlines facing our planet. Leaders at the recent World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, discussed proposals for a carbon tax. The World Economic Forum is an international organization for public-private cooperation and engages political, business, and cultural leaders to help shape global agendas. The president of Singapore proposed a global carbon tax to force companies into moving away from power sources like coal and oil, and warned that if this is not done, developing countries will be the most impacted by climate change. While other leaders agreed that climate change needs to be tackled, they did not share the Singaporean president's proposal. The finance minister for Saudi Arabia suggested that low-income countries be allowed to fuel their own transition away from fossil fuels, while Germany's finance minister proposed developing a carbon market as an alternative. The Environmental Protection Agency just signed off on a California oil company's carbon storage plan as the state transitions away from oil production. The EPA tentatively approved a proposal by California Resources Corporation to transform exhausted oil reservoirs into long-term storage sites. These sites aim to permanently store carbon emissions deep underground in the Elk Hills oil field. That's about 25 miles outside of downtown Bakersfield. It would equate to about 1.46 million metric tons of carbon dioxide each year. The company applied for permits for 5 projects and is trying to earn federal tax credits for the stored carbon. For every metric ton of carbon it captures and stores, the company stands to earn $85 in federal tax credits and possibly more if it qualifies for California state subsidies. Critics argue that carbon capture prolongs the life of polluting industries and does not address other harmful emissions. Environmentalists also worry about the leaks during moving and injection of carbon dioxide. Nationwide, there have been at least 25 carbon dioxide pipeline leaks between 2002 and 2021. That's according to the U.S. Department of Transportation. The EPA draft permit includes measures to cut down on risks such as plugging wells, monitoring for leaks, and getting an insurance policy. Funds for a giant water tunnel project could be drying up on the West Coast. The Delta Conveyance project took a financial hit after a Sacramento County judge ruled California cannot issue bonds to help pay for the project. The decision comes after the Department of Water Resources in 2020 approved loans for an unspecified Delta program. The state agency claimed a 65-year-old law allowed them to borrow money without asking permission from the state legislator. However, environmental groups in several Central Valley counties in Northern California pushed back, arguing the resolution was too broad and the agency's tunnel project was outside the scope of the law on the books. The Superior Court judge agreed, writing in his decision, DWR's definition of the Delta program ignores the project's objectives and purposes and thereby leaves the door open for DWR in its discretion to approve water conveyance facilities that would serve purposes separate and apart from those set forth. The agency's latest proposal is to construct a tunnel that would ferry over 160 million gallons of water per minute from wetter Northern California to drier Southern California. The channel would be about 45 miles long and 36 feet wide, according to officials. Governor Gavin Newsom maintains his support for the plan despite the court's decision. If the resolution was not ruled against, the bonds would have raised $16 billion or more for the Delta project, which officials in 2022 estimated would take 12 to 15 years to build. New Mexico's environmental department is taking its first steps towards what's being called strategic water supply, with the governor first announcing these plans in late 2023. To do this, they're trying to boost water reuse in the state, and they want their citizens to weigh in, asking for experts, businesses, academics, and others to give input into the state's plan to purchase and treat brackish water and leftover water from the oil and gas industry. New Mexico has set out to buy $500 million worth of brackish and treated water to expand its water supply. There are brackish aquifers in some parts of New Mexico. This water is potentially usable if the dissolved solids are removed. The Defense Department will install solar panels on the Pentagon. It's part of the Biden administration's plan to promote energy conservation and clean energy. Jennifer Granholm, the U.S. Secretary of Energy, announced that the Pentagon would receive a slice of a $104 million federal grant from her department's Assisting Federal Facilities with Energy Conservation Technologies program, or AFFECT. She says, quote, "The federal government is the world's largest consumer of energy, and conserving as much power as possible in our buildings and vehicle fleets benefits taxpayers and bolsters our national security." American car buyers have cooled on EVs because of higher prices and lack of charging infrastructure. By comparison, Ford's internal combustion engine vehicles, specifically Broncos and Raptors, are ramping up production to meet demand. Coupled with lower demand, new testing shows electric vehicles appear to be falling short of government driving range estimates. Nearly half of the 22 vehicles tested failed to reach their EPA estimated ranges, with the highway range of the tested vehicles ranging from 202 miles up to 380 miles. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency range estimates listed on electric vehicle window stickers don't have the separate city and highway ranges as they do with conventional cars and hybrids. So, Consumer Reports put 22 of the most popular new EVs through a new highway speed range test. The test involved driving fully charged vehicles at a steady speed of 70 miles per hour and only stopping when each vehicle's battery was completely gone. Consumer Reports said going forward, it will evaluate the highway range for every electric vehicle it tests. It also asked the EPA to add a highway speed range test. A 2022 Consumer Report survey found that 54% of adults said anxiety over range is what would stop them from buying an electric vehicle. Legislators in Mississippi gave bipartisan approval to state incentives for a factory that will make batteries for electric vehicles. The state incentive package totals to around $365 million. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves said the project would be the second largest corporate investment in state history. Plans call for the factory to be built in Marshall County, which is close to the Tennessee state line. The U.S. Treasury Department must approve plans for the plant. If approved, the project promises 2,000 jobs to the local area. The governments of Australia and New South Wales are investing $206 million into energy-saving upgrades for thousands of social housing projects across New South Wales. Cheaper solar energy for renters and residents of social housing projects is also included in the plan. The Australian government claimed that social housing properties were some of the least energy-efficient homes in the country. 24,000 homes will be eligible for upgrades, including solar panels, insulation, and heat pump water systems. The Australian Prime Minister said that these upgrades will make homes more energy efficient and give people access to cleaner, cheaper energy. Greenland has lost 20% more ice than previously estimated. That's what a study found, potentially threatening ocean currents that help to regulate global temperatures. The melting freshwater could shift currents and impact weather patterns. The study combined more than 200,000 observations of glacier endpoints based on satellite images taken from 1985 to 2022. The missing ice is either breaking or melting from the ends of the glaciers around Greenland's perimeter, typically below sea level. Scientists estimate some 5 trillion metric tons of ice have melted since 1992. To put it in perspective, it's about the equivalent of an ice cube covering an area larger than Manhattan and taller than Mount Everest. That's one big ice cube. The Biden administration puts a freeze on natural gas exports. James Rosen has that story.
From a White House that has already invested more in the climate agenda than any other in history, and a president with an eye on a tough re-election cycle ahead, comes a new environmental policy long sought by progressive groups, a pause by the Department of Energy on pending applications to export liquefied natural gas to non-free trade agreement countries.
The department's pause will remain in effect until the agency updates key economic and environmental analyses.
Energy officials will focus their review on reducing costs, on American energy security, on greenhouse gas emissions, especially methane, and on the impacts of LNG production on so-called frontline communities. The White House noted the U.S. remains the world's top LNG exporter.
If you look at the approvals already that have been completed, you've got the number of projects that are under construction set to double the existing capacity, and then approvals beyond that that would double it yet again. So there's a long runway here.
The non-free trade agreement countries include all of Europe, but Biden aides say the U.S. will ensure its allies' quote, medium-term energy needs are met. Still, the Washington Post panned the policy as an election year sop to climate activists that will do much more to unsettle vital U.S. alliances than save the planet. And Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, chairman of the Energy Committee, vowed to hold hearings to expose, quote, this administration's motivations.
The administration's decision, I think, is going to push investment away from the United States into other countries. This is a decision that's bad for consumers, it's bad for American national security, and it's certainly bad for American allies.
Of particular concern, according to opponents of the move, is its potential impact on European nations that had weaned themselves from natural gas exports from Russia following that country's invasion of Ukraine. In Washington, James Rosen.
Coming up, climate scientists and economists issue a warning about some of the potential challenges facing the blue economy.
The reality is Mother Nature's going to happen, and we have to be prepared for it. And that's why I talk about the prudent aspect. And prudent businesses and leaders need to understand, and even government entities, the impact that it has and plan accordingly, whether it's Mother Nature or geopolitical impact that could have influence over what's going on in our waterways.
Stay tuned. That conversation is next. The world's oceans play a key role in the global economy, from supporting global trade to providing food and jobs for millions of people around the world. Financial analysts refer to the sustainable use of the ocean's resources as the blue economy. And according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the blue economy is projected to grow faster than the global economy in the coming decades and reach $3 trillion by 2030. But some climate scientists and economists warn that economic activities related to the seas and coasts could potentially be impacted by climate change. So what can be done to protect the future of this budding subsection of the world economy? Joining us now to take a deeper dive into the topic is business and markets analyst Seth Denson. Seth, welcome on. Thanks for coming in.
Christine, great to be with you.
So how key is this blue economy to the overall financial well-being of the global economy?
Yeah, well, the blue economy effectively accounts for up to 90% of all global trade in some way, shape, or form. That doesn't mean that 90% of all global trade is the blue economy. But the reality is that all global trade is impacted by the blue economy, whether it's something that you receive that may be shipped from overseas, whether it's a box, whether it is something that even sometimes we think about the blue economy only being exports, but you think about the Mississippi River right here in the United States and the Great Lakes. All of that has to do with the blue economy. And so it is an essential component to driving our overall growth, not only as a U.S. economy, but as a global economy.
I mean, we saw how crucial shipping was to all economies when all of the shipping crisis was happening early last year. But recent shipping traffic, it was cut in the Panama Canal. Officials, they announced a reduction in ship crossings that they say is due to a drought. There are some other environmental issues around shipping and trade routes. So how do we balance the needs with the changes that are happening globally?
Well, prudent business people have to plan for all things, right? And then that is a reality, is we are seeing a shift. You mentioned the Panama Canal, which interestingly enough, you would think it is salt water that flows through. It's not. It's actually runoff of natural water, fresh water, that actually is utilized within the Panama Canal. And so that was an essential component. 5% of global trade flows through that. We've seen mass flooding in the Great Lakes, Lake Superior, Lake Michigan. That has impacted trade routes. And just recently, I mentioned a moment ago, the Mississippi Mississippi River. Well, they're seeing significant drought in the Mississippi River right now in certain parts of the valleys. And so that is a key component. And so what we need to do is really start to think about what are our alternatives. But prudent business needs to be planned for regardless of what happens that could be impacted from overall climate impact. Mother Nature is going to happen, and we have to be prepared for it. And that's why I talk about the prudent aspect.
So then what's the future of shipping? Do you think that we could see electric or maybe hydro-powered ships be at least a partial solution? And is it more localized manufacturing? Would that be an option?
I mean, local manufacturing certainly does impact the overall export-import requirements, and what we are seeing happening right now in this movement to electric vehicles and even electric aircraft we're starting to see. Will that make its way into the shipping center? Sure, but it's hard to see a big ship like the Evergrande and some of these others that we've watched operate in a strictly electric capacity. But we need to continue to investigate what can be done to improve our capabilities, to make sure that we're not having harmful impacts on the overall climate, and that is going to impact this. The number of jobs, I mean, we're talking about 30 million plus jobs here as well. We talk about the overall impact of trade, but it is an actual impact to the overall jobs as well. And it's important that we have plans to address all these things.
Something that legislators and policymakers usually like to say is that you have to eliminate or reduce fossil fuels, but this would have a massive impact on the shipping industry. Is this something that's realistic? Is it even possible to eliminate fossil fuels when it comes to shipping?
A lot of times when I hear politicians talk about that, I think they think like it's a switch that we can flip. It's not. And is it something we can do? Well, certainly it can. I hate to think that anything is beyond reach if we focus in and try to make a plan for it. But you can't do it in a vacuum, meaning you have to think about the overall economic impact of decisions that are being made. Are we inside of a world where in the next decade we've eliminated our need for fossil fuels? Absolutely not. Not if we want to be prudent economists as we think about the overall economy. Just because the costs associated with doing that would cause shipping to increase so much, it wouldn't be affordable, and that would have a massive global impact. So I think we have to walk and chew gum at the same time here when it comes to thinking about alternatives to fossil fuels. We need to think through what the planning is, but be prudent in how we do that.
Seth, let's end on a good note. What steps can we take to specifically help the blue economy thrive in the future?
Well, I always like to say anybody that has control, I remember growing up in the era where we would talk about not littering and picking up the ocean and waterways. That is a critical component. This earth is a great blessing, and it's up to all of us to make sure that we maintain it and control what we do. Pay attention to where we buy our goods and how we buy our goods and what companies, what their environmental policies are. But most importantly, what do we control ourselves? That's the thing that we can do.
Seth Denson, thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much.
Coming up, scientists make a stunning discovery about an iconic species in Antarctica. Stay tuned. That story is just ahead. Scientists monitoring the world's largest penguins make a rare find in Antarctica, thanks to some new satellite images. Alex Salvi has more.
The emperor penguin, an iconic species in the coldest place on Earth. But warming temperatures are putting the flightless bird in danger. They're considered to be near threatened with extinction, but a recent discovery is providing a new sense of hope for their dwindling numbers. Satellite images spotting 4 previously unknown colonies over the past year, providing insights about the emperor penguin's migratory patterns.
The importance of this is twofold. It does increase the population slightly, but also it shows us the colonies where the colonies are, because there are a discrete number of colonies around Antarctica, and as the penguins move to find new ice, they may start going to these new colonies. So we need to know where they're going to move to. Because they rarely form brand new colonies, they usually move to pre-existing colonies. So it's very important to know where all the colonies are so we can track their movements over time.
The new colonies don't dramatically change the numbers of known emperor penguins, around 300,000 breeding pairs, but they do help scientists understand why the species may be moving. The early conclusion is that their colonies are melting. therefore threatening their breeding grounds on patches of frozen ice. Scientists currently know of 66 colonies that are suitable for emperor penguin breeding, but that number is quickly decreasing as the Earth's temperature rises. It's a reality that is highly difficult to address, a problem that is not merely centralized to the Arctic Circle, but the entire Earth. It's for this reason that scientists are tempering their excitement about the new discovery.
We can't put the sea ice back. We can't build something for them. That's not the way that it works. Seeing how they adapt and changing our own behaviour, really, because it's not the emperor penguins that need to adapt and change. It's us that need to adapt and change to stop the world warming up. Because the emperor penguin is one species, and this is going to happen to many, many other species as well.
Knowing more about the emperor penguin's movements allows researchers to assist them in their fight to adapt. And with Mother Nature acting as a formidable foe in those efforts, scientists are looking for any advantage they can to ensure the species' survival. For EarthX, I'm Alex Salvi.
Alex Salvi, thank you. Before we leave you, video of an alligator's bizarre winter behavior is going viral on social media. Online footage shows the cold-blooded reptile frozen in an icy pond with just its snout protruding through the frozen water. And this doesn't happen by accident. It does this so it can breathe. The animal was spotted literally chilling out at the Gator Country Rescue Center in Beaumont, Texas, that's just outside of Houston, when temperatures dropped below freezing during a cold snap in mid-January. EarthX TV's very own Gary Sarge explains how the reptile survives the frigid weather. Listen.
Here's what happens, though, to the American alligator. We can leave them outside because they're brilliant. They have figured out to go into a state of hibernation. On a regular warm day, this animal will have a heart rate of 55 beats per minute. Today, he's gone to a true hibernation to where his heart rate is down to 3 beats per minute. This is how they survive.
The state of inactivity Gary describes is called brumation, and it's the gator's way of hibernating. But unlike mammals, the reptiles don't fall into a deep sleep, so despite their low metabolic state, they still wake up so they can drink water. You gotta stay hydrated. That's it for this edition of EarthX News. Please join us again next week. I'm Christina Thompson.